This video is for Homework and Mastery 1.6, Section 5.1 in your textbook, Multiplying and Dividing Fractional Expressions. Remember that when we're multiplying fractions, we multiply numerator by numerator, denominator by denominator. So whenever I want to find 2/3 of 5/8, I want to remember first of all that the word of means to multiply. So I want to multiply 2/3 times 5/8. And I can multiply straight across. 2 times 5, 3 times 8. It is easier to go ahead and simplify at this point by realizing that I can take 2 divided by 2 one time, and 2 will go into 8 4 times. This will make it much easier if I simplify at this point, instead of waiting to the end to simplify. If I wait to the end, I get large numbers. If I simplify at this point, it will be much easier and I get smaller numbers. Now I have 1 times 5 and 3 times 4, leaving me with 5/12. And this is the solution to 2/3 of 5/8 in its simplified form. Now let's look at 9/20 times 5/21. Again, multiplying fractions, I'm going to multiply straight across. At the same time, I want to simplify as much as possible. So I'm going to factor out my numbers. I factor 9 out into 3 times 3, and then I have my 5. 20 becomes 2 times 2 times 5, and 21 becomes 3 times 7. Now if you notice, I have a 3 that is common, numerator to denominator, and I have a 5 that is common, numerator to denominator. So those will get to be crossed out. Now I can see what I have left. On the numerator I have a 3. On the denominator I have 2 times 2 times 7, which will leave me with 3/28. Again, as you can see, it is much easier to simplify in this form than it would be to simplify at the end. Here I have negative 3/16 times 8/11. So I'm going to have negative 3 times 8 over 16 times 11. I'll simplify just a little bit by saying that 16 is the same thing as 2 times 8. Now notice, I have an 8 in common, and I'm going to cross that out. If you'll also notice, I have carried my negative sign through the entire process. This is very important. We do not want to leave out our negative sign. My 8's are now canceled, and I'm left with 3 on the numerator and 2 times 11 on the denominator, leaving me with a negative 3/22. Here, I want to find the area of a triangle with a base of 14 inches and a height of 9 inches. Well, first of all, I have to remember that the area of a triangle can be found by taking 1/2 the base times the height. Now my base was 14 inches and my height was 9 inches. So I substitute the 14 and the 9 in for my base and my height. And now then, also remember that when we're multiplying fractions by whole numbers, we think of the whole numbers as over 1, as I have done here. So I now have 1 times 14 inches times 9 inches on the numerator, and 2 times 1 on the denominator. I want to simplify the 14, factor it out a little bit, into 2 times 7. This way I can notice that my 2's will cancel out. And I'm now left with 1 times 7 times 9 inches times inches, which will leave me with 63 inches squared. Finding the reciprocal. When we're talking about the reciprocal, what we're wanting to do is we want to interchange the numerator and denominator. We're inverting the fraction, or flipping the fraction, when we talk about the reciprocal. So if I want to find the reciprocal of a negative 3/4, what I want to do is I always want to keep my sign and then flip my fraction. So I'll get a negative 4/3. Now then, on the number 8, remember that a whole number is over 1. So whenever I flip it, it will now become 1/8. It's very important to know how to find the reciprocal of a fraction, because this is what we will use when we are dividing fractions. To divide two fractions, we find the reciprocal of the second fraction and then multiply. We really don't divide fractions. What we do is we change it into a multiplication problem. It's what we say: we keep the first one, change the symbol to multiplication, and flip the second fraction. For example, I have negative 4/11 divided by a negative 3/5. Remember, I don't want to divide, I want to flip the second fraction. So I'm going to keep my first fraction, change this from division to multiplication, and flip my second one. I now have negative 4/11 times a negative 3/5. Now negative times a negative becomes positive, and so I have 4 times 5 over 11 times 3. Here, since 3 and 11 are both prime, and neither one will simplify with the numerator, I just multiply out, and I get 20/33. Let's look at this one. I have 7x to the 4th over 20 divided by a negative 21x squared over 50. Remember, the first thing that we do when we have a division with fractions is we flip the second fraction. So I now have 7x to the 4th over 20 times 50 over 21x squared. I'm going to multiply numerator times numerator, denominator times denominator, but I want to go ahead and factor it out as well. That way I can see if there's anything that I can simplify out. Because 5 times 5 is 25, times 2 would be 50. Here's my 7, and then my x to my 4th. 2 times 2 is 4, times 5 would give me 20. 3 times 7 is 21, and there's my x squared. Now notice, I've got a 2 in both numerator and denominator. I've also got a 7, both numerator and denominator. And I've got a 5 in the numerator and denominator. Is there anything else that I have? Yes, I also have x's. I've got an x to the 4th and an x squared. I can get rid of this x squared and simplify this x to the 4th, reduce it down into x squared. So on the numerator, I am now left with 5x squared. On the denominator, I am left with 2 times 3, which will give me 5x squared over 6. We need to remember that when we're looking at application problems, that we need to multiply when we are requiring to have things repeated, if we are adding things repeatedly, or if we're taking a fractional part of something. Like earlier, if we want 2/3 of something. We want to divide when we're wanting to split amounts into a certain number of equal parts. Or if we want to find out how many groups are of a certain size. So let's see how we do. Martha has 11/4 of her income withheld for taxes and retirement. What amount is withheld each week if she earns $1,550 per week. Okay, it says that 11/40 of her income is withheld. So we want to know what 11/40 of $1,550 is. What did we say of meant? It means to multiply. So we're going to multiply here. Remember, when we're multiplying, we multiply numerator times numerator, denominator times denominator, and we can divide at the end. And we will get that this is $426.25. How I got that was taking 11 times 1,550 and then dividing by 40. Wilma is making scarves. Each scarf requires 4/5 of a yard of fabric. How many scarves can be made from 12 yards of fabric? So am I going to multiply or will I divide? She has 12 yards total. She wants to know how many scarves can she make when each of them require 4/5 of the yard. Since we want to know how many ways we can break 12 into 4/5, we're going to divide. Remember, 12 divided by 4/5 is the same thing as 12 times the reciprocal, 5/4. Remember that 12 is over 1, and we're going to multiply, and I've already factored out the 12 into 4 times 3. I've done this so that I can already show you that the 4's will cancel each other out. This leaves me with 3 times 5, or 15. Therefore, Wilma can make 15 scarves out of 12 yards of material if each scarf requires 4/5 of a yard. Remember, if you're multiplying fractions, you multiply straight across, numerator to numerator, denominator to denominator. If you want to divide, you must flip the second fraction. Make sure that you set your problem up correctly. Make sure you know which one you're wanting to divide, how you want to divide. And then you keep, change, flip. You change it into a multiplication problem. If you need help, please let one of us know.